Welcome to the Nurse Shark Academy show with a special leadership lessons episode where we talk about leadership, advocacy, and the future of nursing. I'm your host, Tina Baxter, and today we're diving into a hot topic, one that every nurse using social media should think about: responsible activism and influencing online. We're living in a digital age where nurses have massive influence. We can use our voices to challenge policies, shape and share frontline truths, and educate the public. But as we've seen, some posts can backfire in ways that threaten jobs, licenses, and reputations. So, in this episode, we'll explore real examples of nurses who went viral and sometimes paid the price, what to know about your employer's social media policy, and legal pitfalls that can catch you off guard, and 5 practical tips to advocate effectively without courting backlash. So let's get into it. So let's talk about why social media activism matters for nurses now more than ever. Nurses are the most trusted professionals in the world, and for good reason. We see the system up close, the barriers to care, the health inequities, the burnout. It's natural that we want to speak out. It's part of our profession as advocates. Social media has given us a megaphone. Platforms like TikTok, Instagram, and X allow nurses to amplify their voices beyond the hospital walls. No longer are we living in silos and in our own little bubble in our hospitals and clinics, but now we're able to share what goes on behind the scenes and let people know. So you have some nurse advocates who are doing this beautifully. Take Nurse Keith Carlson, host of the Nurse Keith Show. Nurse Keith is a holistic career coach for nurses, professional podcaster, published author, award-winning blogger, inspiring keynote speaker, and successful nurse entrepreneur. And I've had the opportunity to be a guest on this show. And thank you, Nurse Keith, for allowing me to be there for you. And then think about Takara Durrett. Now, you may know her as I know her as APRN Beauty on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. She uses her online platform to discuss nursing issues in the news with her Nurses in the News segment. And it's funny because we are often paralleling one another when we talk about what's happening in healthcare and in the news. And I get inspired by hearing some of her wisdom as we advocate for nurses and what's happening at the bedside. And she often lets me know about stories that I have not heard of yet. So these are great influencers and nurses that are in social media that I would encourage you to follow. So that's responsible activism. Contemporary, professional, and rooted in advocating for the nursing profession. There are numerous empowered and impactful nurses out there promoting our profession. I've only named 2, but I've had contact with other nurses out there. Ali Fakar. I've talked to Maggie Ortiz. I've talked to Pat Iyer and Lori Brown and all these other wonderful nurses that are out there, and they have a social media presence in some way, some form. And they also are advocating for our profession in the variety of different ways that they do. So if you haven't been following some of these nurse influencers and your nurses, I would encourage you to do that, because what it does for you is allow you to see that you're not alone and what you're experiencing. And these things are real, and they're happening to other nurses. And I count myself lucky to be on this platform and be counted as one of the voices among the many, that I get a chance to share what I learn with you all. I don't count that lightly on either the Nurse Shark Academy show or the Nursing News You Can Use show. So I'm very grateful for that. But for every success story, there's a cautionary tale where good intentions collide with privacy laws, employer policies, and or the court of public opinion. So here we have some real stories where the posts backfire. Let's talk about some real world examples that made the headlines. I remember when this story first came out, this is our first story, the live stream that has gone wrong. I'm a nurse. And again, before I read these off, let me preface this. I am not in the business of bashing any particular person nor their beliefs. I use these stories as they have made the headlines and went viral as examples and cautionary tales. So please hear me out when I say I'm not speaking against any of these persons as individuals. They have the right to live their life and believe what they believe. However, if you're going to put yourself out there, remember that there can be some cost. So here's the first story. The live stream gone wrong. A nurse named Yas Scott live streamed herself passing meds during her nursing home shift. She thought it would be educational, showing what real nurses really do, but the live stream sparked outrage for potential HIPAA violations and unsafe practices. And when I originally saw this story, there were some concerns about her making a medication error during the live stream, which also brings up something that is not just nursing in an isolated incident, because we also had that with the physician. There was that physician, the surgeon, who was live streaming her surgeries, and it was actually used against her in a malpractice case in court. So she ended up losing her medical license. So again, these are real stories of where you may want to go viral, but not for the wrong reason. And I've included in the show notes, if you want to look at these original stories, I think for clarity purposes, I wanted to make sure that I actually put them in there. So they are here in the show notes if you want to go back and look at them. Here's another good one. The influencer under fire. So this is the story of Chris Hernandez, who was an ER nurse and influencer. He was placed on leave after posting a video containing anti-Semitic remarks while wearing scrubs. His employer stated that the content did not align with our organization's values. So if you want to take a look at that, the link is there. But essentially, he made some remarks against the Jewish community. And of course, he got some backlash because of this, as we've noted. And so again, I don't agree with what he said. He has the right to say it, but there can be real consequences when you say things and you attack a certain group, an ethnic group or whatever, because of your particular beliefs. That can backfire on you. Here's another story. This is the Sutter Health incident. This is just in the news if you guys haven't heard of this. So at Sutter Health, staff were caught on camera joking around bodily fluids in a clinic. The video went viral, prompting an investigation and suspensions leading to firing. They actually were fired after this incident. But if you haven't seen it, there's a video of these possibly nurses, more like medical assistants, I would think, who are at the exam room table, and they're showing bodily fluids that are on the table and describing the icky feeling or whatever they get behind that, right? I say that to say, because if you remember a few years ago, we had a similar incident where labor and delivery nurses got around on camera at work and described what their icks were about their patients. And obviously they were also fired as well. So the links to that story with Sutter Health is there in the show notes. And then let's go across the pond, because I don't want you to think that this is just a U.S. problem, because this happens in other places as well. We have the case of Kate, and I'm probably going to say her name wrong, Shimarani, the conspiracy theorist nurse. She was a UK nurse who was struck off. Basically, she was fired off the registered, so it kind of took her nursing license after spreading anti-vaccine misinformation during the pandemic. Furthermore, this nurse took her advocacy to another platform and began to advocate for more holistic and natural remedies instead of chemotherapy, which allegedly led to the death of her own daughter because of her beliefs. And so there's now this viral story about that as well. I say that to say that each of these individuals have the right to believe what they have to say and what they think, but sometimes we need to know that just because we can say it doesn't mean that we should. And each of these examples show how fast things can spiral out of control and how professional reputation extends into the digital world. So let's talk about some of the risks, policies, and legal pitfalls that you may experience. So what are these risks? Let's break it down. Employer policies, that's the first one. Most healthcare organizations have strict social media guidelines, even for off-duty conduct. It's when you are presenting yourself, and remember, you are representing the profession, and not just profession, you're representing your employer even when you're off duty, and some of the things that you do or say can have consequences. We only have to think about what happened with the Coldplay executives, right, that went to the concert and got caught out in an affair, and they had a right to do what they want to do behind closed doors. However, because of the position in the organization, it didn't look good for the organization. And again, you want to make sure that you know what those policies are for your employer. You don't want to be recording your TikToks and viral videos or whatever that you're doing while you're in your hospital scrubs, which was the issue with Nurse Hernandez, was that he was wearing his scrubs and it was readily identifiable that he would work for the hospital. So be very careful where you record your content. I never record my content in my office on the job. This is my personal office, my studio, and I do not record content anywhere else like that, because I don't want to be perceived as representing the place where I work. And so I very rarely even call their name. I don't even mention them by name. I don't want people, I mean, you can find it easily, but I don't want to necessarily put that out there because I'm not representing them. And that brings me to number 2 is patient privacy. You need to remember HIPAA covers anything that could identify a patient, photos, stories, timing, etc. Be very, very careful. If I ever use an example from a patient experience, I never call their name. I change some of the information. I may change the gender. I don't really talk about my patients in that way, other than if it was an example that I'm teaching someone something, an example of a type of patient that I may see. Never do I talk about a particular patient, because it's so important that, so when you do that, remember that you don't know who's listening. And you don't know if that person will think, oh, they're talking about me. And it takes one person to make that complaint. So be very careful when you're sharing stories. I do a lot of educational presentations, and so I may put together a case study, but I'm changing all the background information. So it's not really just that one patient. It's probably a conglomerate of multiple patients that I've used to develop a case study. And then I may, again, change the age, the gender, all these things, because I don't want people to be able to go back and say, hey, I've talked about this particular person. The third thing is defamation and harassment. Ranting about coworkers or facilities can cross into defamation. So I oftentimes will talk about examples of what I've experienced in leadership, what I've experienced working in the workplace, but I never call out the name of the place where I work. Why? Because I don't want to be called into court for defamation and harassment. I can talk about my personal experiences with particular individuals without revealing who that person is. And perhaps they may think that I'm talking about them. That's totally up to them. But I really try not to call names out for the places, because I don't want them to come back and say I'm harassing them, I'm defaming their character. And then our fourth point is licensing consequences. Boards can discipline you for unprofessional conduct online. So getting online and doing TikTok dances with your residents and not having the proper authorization to post it online can open you up to unprofessional conduct and things like that. And this is what happened with that particular surgeon who was posting her surgeries online. She was also hit with the unprofessional conduct online. And so you really need to know what your Nurse Practice Act says and what Nursing Code of Ethics say about some of this information. And then lastly, are there conflicts of interest? So you always want to disclose brand affiliations. And so I make sure that I do that. Right now, I don't really have a lot of sponsors for my podcast or show, but I also, every time I have a presentation, I let people know, hey, I don't have any DME companies or anything like that are making me promote this talk or anything like that. I will mention if I'm being compensated for something, but other than that, I don't really have any major brand affiliations. However, there's some out there. I'll be happy to have a discussion. But needless to say, you want to make sure that you let them know. And so if you have a few affiliate deals, just let them know. And I do. On my seminars, I say, hey, full disclosure, I'll let you know, hey, I've got an affiliate link. I let you know if you use this, it's up to you. If I've got an affiliate link, I have done that on previous shows where I did have someone that I had an affiliate link for, and I was promoting their particular event. And I wanted to make sure that you had a chance to come on and join us because it was a nursing event. So make sure that you disclose any of those brand affiliations because you want to mitigate any of those conflict of interest. So remember, your freedom of speech doesn't mean freedom from consequences. So let's talk about 5 tips for smart, safe advocacy. So number 1, know your employers and the board's policies. Find out what it is. What can you say and legally not say? And again, because I'm not representing my employer, I don't mention their name. I don't endorse anything for them unless I'm asked to do so or they ask me to share something. So I don't even share job postings on my social media without their permission because I don't want anything that will conflict with what I'm doing personally with that of my employer. And then that brings up to number 2, separating your professional and personal identities. I have a professional persona that I have when I'm on here on social media that I try to maintain. I don't engage in a lot of back and forth with people and get into politics. If you've watched my show, you know this. I don't engage in all of that. So you don't see me jumping in and commenting on certain things. That's my choice. Knowing that I want to separate my professional and personal identity. So what I believe in private, I may not share everything openly, but those of you who know me know that I'm very transparent. But I'm the type of person that I believe everyone has a right to believe as they do. And it is not my job to convince you otherwise. It is my job to provide the information, and what you do with it is up to you. And I look at it that way. So I want to be fair and equitable with everyone. And I don't want to necessarily vilify anyone because of their beliefs. That being said, you know me, I have strong beliefs on certain things like nurse practitioners being able to work to the full scope of their practice. Or the fact that nurses need to have their voice at the table and be there and have real power in healthcare. As the largest workforce in healthcare, it is a shame that we don't wield more power, and we should. And we need to take that back and take back our voice for our profession and our own science and our own work and research. We need to own that and no longer apologize for our wanting to have our own voice. We should never have to apologize to be who we are. We are our own discipline. And so we shouldn't have to apologize for that. And you know, I'm a very strong advocate for that. So I focus on issues and not incidents. So I look at the broader picture. And again, I'm not here to paint a colorful picture and make everything look all rosy and peachy, right? No. But I also focus on the issue and not on the individual incident. Because what one person may experience may not translate to everyone's experience. And so I look at the bigger issues. And then you want to stay factual and respectful. Number 4. Remember, stay factual and respectful. So if I don't know the full story, I'm not going to put that story out there. Or I may introduce the story but say, hey, if we hear more about this, we're going to come up. And those of you who follow me on my other show, Nursing News You Can Use, you know that we've been following issues like what's happening with Steward Healthcare from the beginning to what's current. And if something new comes up, I bring it up as part of the show and let you know, hey, this is what's going on. If you want to know, hey, this is day whatever of the strike. This is how it's going. So I cover the news. I provide commentary for the news, but I try my best to stay factual and respectful. And then lastly, number 5, think before you post, pause, and reflect and review. Before you hit that post button, think about this. Is this something I will want my children or my grandchildren to read? Is this something that may get me into trouble with the Board of Nursing? Is this something that my employer may have a feeling about. Now, if it's worth something and you have to say it, then all, you know, by all means say it. But remember, freedom of speech doesn't mean freedom for consequences. And if you're ready to accept the consequences, then by all means, post away, ma'am or sir. And that leads us to this. What happens if backlash happens? Even with the best intentions, backlash can happen. First thing you want to do is take a pause before responding, because when we get attacked, we want to retaliate. We want to get on there and defend ourselves. But remember, you need to take a step back and pause before you respond, so you're not responding in your emotions. I'll give you an example, not on social media, but in a social situation. I was just at the grocery store picking up a few groceries before I decided to head on into the studio for today's segment. I'm in the self-checkout line. I'm bagging my groceries. I have a lot of things that I'm bagging, so I'm making sure I separate them accordingly. The young lady, and I use that term lightly, standing behind me with her friend, makes a very not nice comment and said, "Hurry up, B." And I'm like, I was just putting my last bag in the cart. And in my mind, my first thought was, I know this snaggletooth, raggedy head, wearing clothes that she just got out of bed, stank breath, Hank take a bath person is not addressing me. Okay. That was in my mind. I'm just being the real. So I was thinking, I said, but you know what? I am a real queen. I do not address the issues of someone who clearly is having a moment. Okay. I don't deal with toddlers in their tantrums in that way. So I just looked at her, looked at the checkout lady, got my stuff and left. And I'm like, I'm going to go about my day. But had I been in my emotions and didn't take a step back to pause before responding, it could have come into something and turned into a moment that I really didn't want to have. I don't want to give her that energy. So you can waddle and take your little pregnant self off, young lady, with your friend, and you can kiki on your Snapchat, which is what you were on, and whatever else you were doing, and you have a blessed rest of your day. Okay? Because hopefully one day you'll be able to get a little decorum about yourself. Not be so brash. Yeah, and again, it's not a generational thing. It was clearly a lack of class moment, and yeah, she was having a moment. Bless her heart, and I'm just gonna pray for her. Okay. So the second thing is to clarify. If backlash happens, clarify. Don't escalate. I think about the response, and again, I don't like to get in other people's beefs and all this stuff, but it's been out there. We've been talking about it, and I've been watching the Cardi B, Nicki Minaj thing, and I'm like, Nicki is on one. I don't know what's going on. Fans, don't come for me. I like them both. Okay, I do. I like them both, and I have to say, I really had a hard time when Cardi first came on, because I'll be honest with you, I was like, what did she just say? It took me a minute to understand the way she talks, but she's a very intelligent woman. So I actually have a little bit of respect for her, because Cardi B is kind of real with whatever she has to say. So I'm watching this back and forth, and I love how Cardi B gave that response on X. That kind of, said, hey, sis, you're kind of out of pocket. Maybe you need to work on yourself and your demons, basically, is what she said. So I'm reading this. This is what me and my friend were thinking. I was talking about this with a friend. I said, I just wonder if that's really Nicki and that's really Cardi, or maybe there's some social media people that are just back there just doing this for likes and whatever else. And I thought, what if neither one of them are actually posting this and have no idea that this fake people are posting on their behalf? I just had a thought about that because of the whole Dave Chappelle joke that he was talking about with Cat Williams, and that made me think, well, maybe it's not really Nicki and not really Cardi, and they just having this beef that they're not even really involved in. Now, I know they had beef in the past, don't get me wrong, I understand that, but I say that to say, when you have an issue that has some backlash, try not to escalate things. It makes it worse, or you may be talked about and laughed at the Super Bowl. I'm just saying, maybe you shouldn't start something if you don't want there to be nothing, right? And so clarify, don't escalate the situation. And third part, seek some guidance. If you have an issue, talk to someone who can give you some sound advice, people maybe who've gone through this before. And also, you might want to also talk to a legal representative to make sure that you haven't stepped over the line and there's something that you need to do to mitigate the consequences of what's happening. So you never want to find yourself out there like it's the wild, wild west, just shooting away and not having a chance to respond accordingly. So ask someone who knows, look at your policy, know that policy back and forth. That's the one thing I don't understand about nurses nowadays. Please, if you work somewhere, read the employee handbook back and forth. Know what it says. That's all I'm going to say. I'm going to get off of that rant. Trust me on that one. And document everything. Document everything that happened, who said what and when, the time. We know this. Nurses, if it wasn't documented, we know it wasn't done. So document everything. Put it in an email so that you have evidence that you had this conversation. So per our conversation, nurse manager so-and-so. I'm just making sure I have clear understanding and clarity around this issue. Right. And then put the time that you talked about the day and everything and save it. And then, of course, I'm going to say, if it doesn't contain sensitive patient information or things like that, have a copy for yourself. Okay. And then 5, learn and share. Mistakes can be powerful lessons, which is one of the reasons why I shared some of the stories from these nurses that were out there on social media, because I think those mistakes can be powerful lessons of what not to do. So we know that social media is a powerful advocacy tool, but it's also a risky one. Before posting, take a breath, remember your duty, and lead responsibly. If this episode helped you, share it with a colleague or a nursing student. Again, I'm Tina Baxter. I'm the host of the Nurse Shark Academy show. I wanted to share some of these leadership lessons in between some of our guest spots. And so I thought most of our leadership lessons have been to our patrons of the show, so they have access to the video and access to those podcast episodes. But I thought this was so important, I wanted everyone to have access to this particular leadership lesson episode. So tune into the Nurse Shark Academy show. And as I like to say, come feel the sun. Lead with your voice and protect your license while you do it. So remember that your license is yours. Your license is your business, and you want to protect your business. The Nurse Shark Academy show is looking for nurse entrepreneurs, innovators, and business leaders to be a guest on the show. So if you're looking to be a guest on the show, please reach out to us. I'd be happy to have a conversation with you. And if you know of any nurse entrepreneurs, innovators, or business leaders that you think would be good guests on the show, I'd love to have an introduction so that I can follow up with them. And if you've always been curious about how to be an effective podcast guest and how to get booked on other podcast shows, sign up for our webinar at the nursesharkacademy.biz. So remember, nurses, we can use social media and be a great advocates for change without risking our licenses or our reputations. So thank you for tuning in. See you next time. Bye-bye for now. Mistakes can be powerful lessons, which is one of the reasons why I shared some of the stories from these nurses that were out there on social media, because I think those mistakes can be powerful lessons of what not to do. So we know that social media is a powerful advocacy tool, but it's also a risky one. Before posting, take a breath, remember your duty, and lead responsibly. Nurses, are you burnt out, frustrated, looking for something new? Are you looking for more? Nurses, are you ready to feel the sun? You will dream big and expand your consciousness as an entrepreneur. Your nursing license is your key to freedom. Join the Nurse Shark Academy at thenurssharkacademy.biz today. Welcome to the Nurse Shark Academy show, where we're experts in nursing and experts in business. I'm Tina Baxter, your host. The Nurse Shark Academy show highlights nurse business owners and others in the healthcare field who promote entrepreneurship. We interview nurse leaders and encourage them to tell their story. The mission is for you to own your seat at the table of nurse entrepreneurship, gaining the confidence, skills, and freedom to live your life on your own terms. You will dream big and expand your consciousness as an entrepreneur. Today's episode is a very special one from our leadership lesson series that we have. And today's episode is on Advocate Smart, Nurses, Social Media, and Responsible Activism. Ready to turn your nursing skills into a thriving business? At the Nurse Shark Academy, we give you expert strategies, real startup guidance, and the support to go from employee to empowered entrepreneur. Join us and build the nurse-owned business of your dreams. Start today and join us at thenurssharkacademy.biz. Thank you for listening to the Nurse Shark Academy show wherever you get your podcasts or watching us on YouTube. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and don't forget to hit the notification bell so that you'll know when all of our episodes come out. If you want further information, you can contact us on the nurssharkacademy.biz.